everybody, and welcome again to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and with me today is Justin Schorr. Hello, Justin.
Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Fan-friggin-tastic. Good to see your face again. Viewers, Justin and I have known each other since we were way too young and irresponsible to be doing what either of us do for a living.
I was young and stupid then. I feel old and stupid now.
It's the best way to be, really.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, however, Justin has racked up quite the list of accomplishments. Justin is a rescue captain for the San Francisco Fire Department, where he served as a field paramedic and a firefighter, a field captain, and administrative captain. He's aircraft rescue firefighter qualified and is currently overseeing EMS response for San Francisco International Airport. He spent 25 years in the fire service and is experienced in rural, suburban, and urban firefighting and paramedicine. So literally an action hero is what I'm reading here.
Without the cape, I sound really good when I write down everything I've done so far. Still feel like I'm trying to find my way through life like everybody else. But yeah, if you've seen a fire engine, an ambulance, a rescue truck running through your community, chances are I've handled what they're on their way to do.
Outstanding. And one of the things I've noticed about what paramedics do, what firefighters do, what police do, you remember that meme that was real popular about 5 years ago where you'd have like 6 panels and it would be the thing and then what society thinks I do, what my mom thinks I do.
Yep.
There's all these things that we think the firefighters and paramedics do, but from what experience I've had talking to folks doing ride-alongs, what you mostly do is see the horrible stuff that the rest of us don't want to see and deal with its consequences.
We make bad days better. That's what we do. When you boil it down to the basics. I might be bringing your grandfather back to life after a cardiac arrest. I might be administering life-saving medications for your uncle's asthma attack, or I might just be trying to calm you down after, a little bit of an anxiety issue, a panic issue, and I can talk to you for 15, 20 minutes and you're fine. So a little bit of everything.
And that's what you do for us. But what happens to you is you basically just go from somebody's worst day to somebody else's worst day for your shift, and then you go home.
Yeah.
And
pretty much.
I want to thank you for that, because that's a duty that they don't tell you about in the recruiting videos and the TV shows.
They don't, no. And when they do, they sometimes over dramatize it, that we try not to be overly emotionally connected to our patients, but at the same time, I'm still a human. So there are scenes that we deal with that we do kind of internalize, but I have to, because I need to deal with that incident later because I'm on my way to another one. And I can't show up at your house and say, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it. We just had a really rough call with a kid. And, if I could just have a couple hours to process that, that'd be great. No, we go from one problem to another problem, solve it as best we can. And then when we have downtime, then we can process some of this stuff. So in the TV shows, it make us seem either overly emotional or completely emotional devoid. We're somewhere in the middle or at the extremes, back and forth, up and down.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we're having you on today, because I know from speaking to you and from other law enforcement officers, EMS people across the board, that the worst things you see is when something happens to a kid. And
it can be. And the main thing about that is that there was some adult somewhere that could have prevented it. And that's one of the things I really want to talk about today on some of the things that we see is most things with kids are completely preventable. My daughter is 14 and wants to go out and start babysitting. So yesterday I taught her CPR and choking for infants and children. And I kept telling her that, babies this of a certain age will always put things in their mouth. So it's up to you to make sure there is nothing for them to put in their mouth. The best way to treat a choking is to prevent it. So, seeing stuff happen to kids is rough, but mainly just seeing stuff happen that could have been prevented, that people knew what they were doing was going to get them hurt and they got hurt. That's the most frustrating. The best day for me is when no one needs me.
Exactly. And that idea that people know how to prevent it. I think sometimes parents either don't know how to prevent it or it doesn't occur to them in the moment. And before we sat down to talk, you sent me a list of some of the injuries that you would love to never, ever, ever do a call for again.
Yeah, and this was off the top of my head, sitting on my patio after a long day, and I just, on the phone, just rattled out the first things I could think of. I even read the list to the wife, and she's like, yeah, pretty much.
So because they're that common. And
Yes, and
that's
that
tragic and frustrating.
preventable, and that I shouldn't have to see most of these things, but I do, and they're difficult to deal with, not just because of the range of the injury, the severity of the injuries that these things cause, but like I said, it's completely and totally preventable. When I go to a motor vehicle collision and someone is seriously injured or deceased because they weren't wearing a seatbelt, the seatbelt is still sitting and rattling on the side. I just have to take a deep breath and say, well, this is what happens. I'm still going to
And
work my hardest to bring them back to a point where I can tell them that in person. But, it's like, come on.
And that's actually one of the ones on the list. The exact words were still no seatbelts.
Still
So
no
I'm interpreting
seatbelts.
from that parents are still driving in a car in the 2020s now with their kids not buckled in.
We're in our third generation of adults that have had seatbelt standard in vehicles, and people are still not wearing them. We still get the standard excuses of wrinkles my clothes, or I was just in a hurry, or I'm just going from here to there. But there are still people not wearing seatbelts, and there are still children not properly restrained in these vehicles, not just in seatbelts when they're older. We could do probably a 6-part series on the different ways I've seen car seats, air quotes, installed in vehicles. The manufacturers have made it so easy to do it right, and yet still folks will do it wrong. They'll take it to take a car seat to a local police station or fire station, and the liability involved with installing it, you're better off just going to the store where you bought it and asking the kid to read the instructions for you and put it in. But it's so easy to just wear a seatbelt. They work. The car's not going to explode like on TV. Don't worry about the police pulling you over. Worry about me pulling your lifeless body out of the car. Put that in your mental rearview mirror when you're getting in and you think, seatbelt, schmeatbelt.
Yeah, I have to say, and I try to keep this a family-friendly show. I try to keep it PG-13. I am choosing my words very carefully. I'm hearing you say that there are adults who still don't strap their kids into their seatbelts, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, are you kidding me?
There you go. You get one per PG-13.
Okay, well, there it is.
There it is.
But and I've heard you say some of the things they're saying, that they're in a hurry, that they're not, that it wrinkles your clothes, what have you. I'm at a bit of a loss for how you would justify not strapping in your kids. And I kind of think that anybody who is motivated to watch this show about parental safety is probably not our target audience for convincing them not, or to convince them to strap their kids in. But in case, what are some of the reasons you've encountered when you bump into somebody who doesn't seatbelt their kids?
A lot of times it's the kids are in the back seat, the parents are in the front seat, and when the kids are old enough, they can, click and release the restraint very easily, climb up into the front seat, get something, and climb into the back. It's very difficult to change that behavior, especially as an outsider, especially as a person of authority who has no, there's no weight behind what I ask people to do. It's not like I can write them a ticket for something. And even then, it's a monetary penalty for something that should just be straightforward. So I like to go, if I'm wandering around in my supervisor's vehicle, which we do still call a buggy. So if I'm in the buggy and I see someone who's not wearing a seatbelt, I will get behind them and turn on my red lights. They'll pull over and I'll just say, hey, I noticed that you weren't wearing your seatbelt. Is everything okay? Oh yeah, I was just real quick, just excuse. But if it's a kid, then I'll try to get law enforcement involved and really impress upon the parents that I don't want to get you quote unquote in trouble. I just don't want to have to tell you your child is dead for something that's so easily enforced. We're not going anywhere until everybody's in their seat and clicked in.
And you brought up a situation that I think happens more often than we'd like to think about, that I know I've been guilty of from time to time, where you're driving and the kid wants to do something that means momentarily unbuckling. Maybe there's a toy on the ground that they can reach only if they unbuckle, or like you said, they want to slide into the front real quick to get something. And even some very patient, or rather conscientious parents will sometimes say, oh, okay, that's just fine. It won't matter for a few seconds. But of course, when your kid's scrambling around in the car, those are the seconds you're going to get distracted, and you're more likely to get an accident than when the kid's strapped in. So even under those circumstances, we should just pull over for the 30 seconds and Yeah.
it's going to cost you a little while to find a place to pull over. If you're on a city street, it's going to be super easy. If you're on the freeway, maybe the next exit. Make that the time you stop for gas. Make that the time you stop and get something else out of the back. Or okay, do we have all our toys set up? There is, of course, there's going to be a situation where you're alone on the road. You're not distracted. You have another adult who can maybe just for 5 seconds unclick, reach back, grab the thing, and do it. But if you're alone in the vehicle, you're the only adult controlling the vehicle. Never. Never, never, never.
That makes sense. So again, hopefully the people who are interested enough in family safety to be watching this show have already internalized this lesson. But it's good to lead with that. It is so easily preventable. And if you want to go look at statistics about why it's better than not wearing seatbelts, Google is our friend on that. You will not find a responsible reporting agency that suggests that seatbelts are anything but a good idea.
Unless it's the local school board and school buses. I still can't figure out why school buses don't have seatbelts.
That has been a mystery to me
Boggles
as well.
my mind.
All right, so let's see here. What else have we got on this list? Choking on food given to kids who are too young.
Yeah, so when you've got a toddler coming up and we're slowly introducing new foods, take it easy, take it slow. It's very easy to try to leap ahead with what you've already got in the fridge, maybe for the older kids or for the adults. I hear a lot of adults tell me, or people in my CPR courses tell me, oh, I don't give the baby grapes, I cut the grapes in half. And that's neat and all, but when you cut a basketball in half, it's still the size of a basketball. It still won't fit through all those places. So cutting grapes in half just means it's going to be a lot easier to get that grape in and choke on it. A lot of the dry foods, they make them in very small pieces for the kiddos. They got those little grab and go cups of the rice treats and such. Too many of those in the mouth can become dry and can get kind of caked on the epiglottis, and that can be very uncomfortable and cause a choking. But of the chokings I've gone on that are not, I'll call it foreign object, if your kid hasn't had a bead up their nose, you haven't parented right, in my opinion. Getting beads out of noses, kids choking on coins, small toys, pieces of toys, things you never expected to be out and about in the house, a marble. All these toys and games have these little balls that go around, and they always seem to find their way in there. One of the things I stressed to my daughter yesterday teaching her was, it is your responsibility as a caretaker to make sure that every single thing the baby could put in their mouth is gone, is out of the way, is not accessible. And if you're wondering if it's going to be an issue, just look at baby's pinky finger. So the diameter of the pinky finger is the diameter of the narrowest point of your airway. So my airway is about that wide. So anything bigger than that finger, if that gets lodged, I'm going to choke on it. So look at your child's finger and don't give them anything larger than that to put in their mouth until they can actually control chewing, swallowing confidently.
So anything larger than this that is not large enough that it can't actually go in the mouth, we want to be very vigilant about.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any particular foods that you've noticed are, what's the word, particularly dangerous, trouble spots? Grapes is a big one where people cut them in half, cut them in quarters, because grapes feel like a good healthy snack, but they're just the wrong size.
Yeah,
right?
grapes are easy. That's why we put them out. But when you finally have a child, like I said, that can confidently and consistently chew, then swallow, then maybe have some water, properly chew. It's the kids that throw it in the mouth and they're just inhaling it. Anything that needs to be bitten in half or taken a part of, a cookie, for example. The cookie should be broken up into smaller pieces if you're going to give it to them. And that's cracker, that's cookie, that's anything else like that. If you give them the whole thing, there's a possibility that they could not only take too big of a bite, but as they're trying to chew it and they salivate, it's actually creating this kind of little deadly ball of cookie dough that they're going to, again, try to swallow, and it's going to get stuck.
So it sounds like really close attention, even in those moments where we tend to feel like we're a little bit off duty, is a really important place to, what's the word I'm looking for? Make some changes.
And it's very easy to pop them in the high chair, throw a couple grapes out, and take that 5 minutes out of line of sight to kind of be your own person for a little while. I've been there. I've got two daughters, 2 years apart, so I had that stage where one could kind of go off and do their own thing, and I wanted the other one to go off and do her own thing, but she was still too little, so it's still breaking up the bar. And yeah, it's tough, but it's something that you can do to avoid a choking, so do it.
It's tough, but it's not as tough as the potential outcome otherwise.
Correct. Watching me try to dig down with my tools and get out whatever it was that was in there is going to be far more traumatic than whatever your child says or screams that they want that snack.
And while we're on the topic of choking, getting that child and infant first aid training and certification, of course, should be fairly important as well, I would imagine.
It should be. And again, YouTube and Google are your friend. If you're not entirely sure, if you're nervous, find out if any of your friends work in what we call the 3 disciplines: fire, police, and paramedicine. And reach out to them. Hey, can you come over for dinner and just kind of teach me the basics? A 6-pack of beer if you can show me this and that and the other. Or just go out and watch some videos. The American Heart Association has some great stuff. Many local training organizations have short videos on what to do if a child is choking, basics of CPR, and just get that through and make it comfortable for you. So if something does happen, you can call 911 on speakerphone and know what they're going to walk you through instructions wise.
Outstanding. And folks, we'll post a few links to some of the better videos in the show notes. Now that does put in mind a story from when my youngest was born. My oldest came to us at the age of 7, but my youngest was an infant. And this was back when I ran a martial arts studio. One of my students, who is a 16-year-old, had her junior black belt for a couple of years, comes up and says, "So, Sifu, do you need a babysitter?" I'm like, "Well, yes. Are you infant first aid certified?" She said, "No." A week later, she comes up to me, "So, Sifu, I'm infant first aid certified."
Need a babysitter? Yeah.
I don't need one, but I'll make an opportunity.
Yeah, and it was back in the day, when I was growing up, my babysitters didn't have any necessary training, and when I was babysitting, I didn't have any of this training, and now it's almost like we're hiring babysitters like we do employees. Looking at your CV, have you been published? Do you have the requisite training? What are your culinary skills? So it's good though.
Yeah.
It's good that we're really empowering people. We've identified some of the risks, and we're applying some real basic solutions to that, and that's good.
And I think you made a really valid point that although formal certification is nice, we're busy parents with busy lives, and we might not be able to find the 4 hours to go down to the Red Cross and get the certification. But the information is right there on YouTube. The information is right there on an objectively pleasant dinner with a friend of yours who works in the 3 disciplines. So let's get focused on the information, and then if certification is something we want, it's also there.
Yeah, I'd much rather have someone come and watch my children that can explain to me exactly what they're going to do if something happens, rather than someone with a card from the local community center and they're still not sure what to do. So it's all about confidence and knowing the tools that are available and how to apply them.
Outstanding. Okay, let's see here. That was choking. The next one, you just put trampolines.
Trampolines. We love trampolines. They are good for business. Orthopedic surgeons love trampolines. They're great for business. The cast making companies love trampolines. If you've got a trampoline in your yard, I can almost guarantee you're going to have us over at some point.
Wow. Are there particular injuries that are really common? Anything parents can do? Or is this just one of those?
Lower leg fractures.
Okay.
Yep. A twisted ankle here and there, broken foot, not that common, but coming down oddly, especially when you got 3 or 4 or 5 kids jumping around, and they're going to come down and they're going to have that break at the lower leg. We see the same thing at these, they call them jump parks, or pretty much it's a place where you run around. It's all trampolines. We had one near one of the fire stations I worked at the city for a while, and we'd be there every other day for a broken leg. And it's, it's fun. I've done it, but I go very slow and very easy because the problem is everybody's jumping around me, and I can't trust people.
So ideally we just say, trampolines are great for other people, but if you have a trampoline or you're really set on having a trampoline and you can't quite tell your kid no or whatever, is there anything that parents who insist on having trampolines can do or insist on that will lower the chances of those injuries?
One person at a time, and don't jump as high as you can. Yeah.
That's simple.
Which makes the trampoline totally boring, in my opinion. It's if you're going to have a trampoline, you're just going to have injuries. It's just going to come with it. Nothing you can really do to improve it except always make sure that the children are supervised while they're doing it. Always stop horseplay. Always stop them if they're running around near the edges. Trampoline is designed to be jumped on by one person in the middle of the tread, and that's it.
Yeah. Still no seatbelts was the next one. We talked about that.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Hey, we just had 4th of July, as we're recording this. Explosives. They're now legally marked as explosives because there's only 1 month of the year where explosives can be labeled as not explosives. And that's all of June into July. The rest of the time, they have to actually be labeled with a giant orange square that says danger explosives. And I think a lot of people forget that, it's just fireworks, it's just this, it's just that. Ask any doctor that's worked in the emergency department on 4th of July, ask any paramedic on 4th of July, what do you see the most? And it's burns from explosives. And it's not the M80 blowing the hand off. It's kids with magnesium burns, because those sparklers burn at over 3,000 degrees. They are hot. And we give them to kids. We tell them, go run around in the yard and draw your name and do these things. And I hear people say, when I was a kid, nobody got hurt. Yeah, people got hurt. Your parents just kept you from it. So
it reminds me a little of that meme you see sometimes. It's got a picture of a bunch of kids in the back of a pickup truck that says, like or share if you survived doing this. Like, well, that's the definition of selection bias.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people will say, it's okay, I'm a good driver. I don't care about you. I care about everybody else. When I rode in the back of a truck, it was in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, on a dirt road with nobody else there. That's different than throwing your kids in the back of the truck and going down into suburbia these days where we got 4 lanes wide, 50 miles an hour. It's insane. But the explosives, it's one of these preventable things. This year was difficult because we couldn't say, let the pros handle it. A lot of these large fireworks shows were closed. So people were going out and buying larger mortars on the, on the illegal black markets. And it just made things worse. And we did see an increase in injuries. Big surprise. The best way to keep yourself safe from explosives is don't light them. And I know I sound like a buzzkill. No trampolines. You got to wear a seatbelt. No explosives. But this is all easy, preventable stuff that I've seen.
And I think that's an important thing for both of those points. And there's a couple more coming up on the list. Let's actually, before we get to the point I was about to make, the other one that is very similar here is just razor scooters. You see a lot of injuries from those. What's the deal there?
Speed and balance. Yeah. With a bicycle, you've got brakes. With a razor scooter, sometimes the kids know they can push on the back and slow down. They're fun. They're easy. They're collapsible. Go play outside. Jump on a razor scooter, find a hill, go for it. We do see a lot of forearm fractures, head injuries. Wear a helmet. If you're on a bike, if you're on a scooter, if you're doing anything faster than running, please be wearing a helmet. These kids get out there, they learn speed. Speed is fun. Speed hurts. And, I do still meet a lot of parents that say, back in my day, we used to get beat up all the time. And okay. And beat up, I mean, falling, getting a nasty gravel burn or maybe a twisted arm, wrist or whatever. But hey, if you'd slowed down just a little bit and been more careful, you'd be fine. So let's try to instill that in your children. Wear a helmet, slow down.
And these 3 that we just talked about, trampolines, fireworks, razor scooters, there's a kind of a meta issue to talk about where these are things that the risk reward analysis balances or goes off balance to risk, that the risk of these things outweigh the rewards of these things, as fun as they are. Is there any advice you have to parents about that? You want your kids to be happy. You want your kids to have fun. Your kids want these things so much. And we have to be the bad guy. We have to deny them this thing that would bring them joy. What are some thoughts about that?
It's all about responsible practice. If I just buy the kid a razor scooter and say, knock yourself out, they're going to go outside and learn from what they see on how that device is supposed to be operated.
And quite literally knock themselves out, perhaps.
Perhaps. But if we get the Razor scooter and dad jumps on his bike, like, hey, let's go around the neighborhood. Let's try it out. Oh, I'm going to get my helmet. You go get yours. And that's the start of, oh, you want to go on your scooter, you have to take your helmet. Now, when they go out with their friends and their friends are going crazy and they decide to, at least they've got the basic level of protection in case anything goes wrong. Is that going to prevent them hitting a tree, falling down, breaking their arm? No, but they will be more aware of their fragility, if you will.
So it's almost as though modeling is a good skill to develop as parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we can take the time to go out and show them by example how things are supposed to happen, when their friends come in going crazy, their first thought is not going to be, my dad is slow. It's going to be, man, my friends are going way too fast.
So it sounds like with all these things and then similar toys or experiences that are more dangerous, the best solution is to just opt out. But if you're not in a position where you can do that, to model good behavior, make the safe behavior the default, and to supervise.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is a point where they are going to go off, you know, and do their own thing with their friends where you can't see them, and that's fine, so long as you've set that expectation. If they come back and the helmet is on the handlebars, and you see them coming back, well, guess who doesn't get their scooter for a while?
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Well, next one on our list here is hot water burns.
Hot water burns, yeah. We get a lot of this, especially the tea drinking families. Even though you have the kids watching you make the tea and they know that the kettle is hot and they know that the cup is hot, eventually, a little bit through you drinking it, they forget, at a certain age, they forget that it's hot. And they might reach up and I want what mommy has and take a drink. And that water is still extremely hot and can cause burns. It's when you're going to give a bath, of course, you want to test the bath water. If you have a newborn or a young child in the house, I want you to go out to your water heater and turn it down considerably. You can have a couple warm showers for a few months until you get used to testing the temperature of the water before a bath. You get used to testing the temperature of the water before you feed the baby. All of those things, you can slowly start dialing the water heater back up. But the biggest one is beverages, hot beverages like tea. We had a child come in on the airplane. It was a 16.5-hour flight, and they landed, and he had second-degree burns all over his hands and all around his mouth. And the crew was very concerned. They're like, we think we don't know what happened. We don't, you know, this, that, and the other. And I'm looking at the injuries, and I said, I know exactly what happened. Someone served mom tea. Kid reached over. He was maybe 18 months. Reached over, grabbed the cup, and tried to take a drink. It splashed on his hand. He freaked, and it shit. So it's easy to say don't leave hot water out, but you know, I've got my coffee here that right when I pour it in could be very dangerous. So I'm going to make sure I put it up top, put it in the middle of the table. You always want to have a large area around that high chair, especially if you've got one that clips into the table for the younger kids, where not only can they not reach anything, but you wouldn't accidentally set something down. So it's very easy to forget that something that I drink quite pleasantly could burn a child. So that's that.
I would imagine similarly, when you're cooking with something that involves boiling water, use the back burners, keep those handles turned away from the front.
If you're going to have, I would say, one toddling child, you can maybe control. If you've got two toddling children and your stovetop controls are on the front, might be a good time to just go out, spend a couple $100 on just a simple unit that's got the controls in the back. Maybe not everyone is of means to go out and buy another oven real quick, but that can remove a lot of anxiety when it comes to having kids moving around in the kitchen. You know that there's a good chance that it will be very difficult for them to actually climb up there and turn that on. I'm not going to say they can't. These kids get creative. I don't know about you when they were growing up, but mine had a big step stool in the bathroom for brushing teeth. That step stool would find its way around the house. So they're very innovative. These kids are problem solvers. We give them all these toys where they have to solve problems, and they will go out into their environment and do that as well. So it's not just putting things up high, it's putting things up high even when they use that tool to try to get up there. And like I said briefly, bathing is another big issue. Turning down that water heater is going to be key. Always testing the water. Don't make it warmer and, think, well, I'm going to bathe both kids. I want it hotter now so it'll stay warmer longer. That water's going to hurt. If they say, ow, too hot, it's too hot. Dump it and start again.
Wow, that's
scary. And one other real quick thing, pasta. You go through, you make the little macaroni pasta for the little one to just gnaw. If you cooked it properly, it's probably not a choking hazard. However, make sure you rinse the pasta in cool water. I've had a number of incidents where kids' tongues have been burnt because the parents made the pasta, drained it, dumped it in a bowl, and went for it. There's still boiling temperature water inside the pasta. So watch out for that.
Yeah, shell pasta. I've had a couple issues my own self testing it. That little reservoir of boiling water.
Yep. Yeah, it's a little surprise, a little steamed surprise. Man.
All right. Well, next one you have here is the escalator or moving walkway. I've heard you mention this a few times. It's a bit of a surprise, a dark horse.
So I work at an airport now where we have a large amount of people moving equipment, escalators, moving walkways. And it's amazing that we put all this iconography. We break it down to shapes and colors. There's a big sticker about 5 inches around that shows an adult using the handrail holding on to the hand of a child. That almost never happens. The kids are on their own. They're pushing the roller bags around. They're bumping into stuff and falling down. And it's important to remember that these are pretty much giant tigers with big claws waiting to get you. And not a year goes by, not a year, that we don't have some sort of incident where a child is seriously injured because some parent was not paying attention. So as you're boarding these devices, look for the stickers, look for what the recommendation is. I stand there and use the handrail. I'm a grown man and I still use the handrail. Now, I use the back of my hand, of course, because you never want to put the front of your hand on a surface that might be contaminated. So always the back of my hand. But that steadies me because sometimes it goes faster, a little slower. The moving walkways can kind of move side to side. And this happens to adults and to children. The adults, believe it or not, are the ones that are more likely to get their shoes caught on the side or at the top because they're most likely wearing sandals or something easily slip-offable for TSA inspection. So those will get caught. But the biggest problem with children and an adult not holding them is they'll lose their balance and they'll fall forward and put their hands flat. At the top of the escalator, if you remember, there's those giant teeth that are going to come in and accept it. And that will take fingers off. We had a young child that was in one of those harness leashes. I'm sure you've seen these around. It's for those adventurous toddlers. You put them in the harness and it's got the leash and mom just holds on to it. That shows me that you're kind of willing to not let them get lost, but you don't care what they're doing 8 feet away. So the parent was holding on to that leash, not the child, on the escalator. Child toddled forward and it took the pinky finger off. Obvious drama. Child screaming. My paramedics are taking care of that. And then the ladder truck, which specializes in removing things from people, not people from things. Me, the ladder truck, and the elevator mechanics took the next 45 minutes slowly taking the entire machine apart to find the finger. And they were able to reattach it at the hospital.
Well, so, that's some good news, but wow,
that's some good news, but holding the child's hand for the 15 seconds it takes to go up the escalator would have changed everything.
I think it pays to, this is one example of, this is heavy industrial equipment.
Yes.
And the kind of stuff that if it were at your place of work, there would be gloves mandatory, there would be a helmet mandatory, the OSHA inspector would come by once a year to give you a little bit of extra training.
Yeah.
And here, your kids are interacting with that. You wouldn't take your kid onto the factory floor at an auto manufacturing plant without keeping hold of their hand very carefully.
Yeah, there's a reason they keep all the inner workings and everything of that escalator closed in, because if there was glass, plexiglass, and you could see the mechanicals, no one would ride it. No one would get on it. They'd say you're insane. There's no way. So
yeah, I remember personally, I grew up very, very safe about escalators because there was a Pink Panther cartoon episode where he got sucked up into the slot in the escalator and brought to this alternate dimension. And I spent my entire childhood terrified of that happening to me.
Good. See, that's a way that media is influencing you to be safer.
Outstanding. Well, that's yeah, like I said, kind of a dark horse, but it makes total sense when you explain it.
So totally
Yeah.
preventable. And
Mhm.
the injuries that we see on the adults, I
Mhm.
mean, if you like your feet, if you like your
Mhm.
toes, do me a favor. You know those little brushes on the sides of the
Mhm.
escalator? Everybody reaches down with their foot and kind of plays with it. That
Mhm.
was originally designed at our airport to keep people's feet away from the edges,
Mm.
but it kind of attracts them to the edges now.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of a bummer. But if you stand in the middle and you hold the
Mhm.
handrail and you step off at the top where it says step off, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the next one. This is a big one I know is pool safety.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Preventable drownings.
your buddy Jason has just a heart-wrenching story on his blog about the first one
Yep.
of those he responded to.
Yep. And
Mm.
it's difficult because as a pool owner and as a parent, I am hyper vigilant about what's going on.
Mm.
Um, Local statutes require that the gates open a certain way, and for certain ages, there has to be either a fence or door alarms or both or a cover or a combination of all these things for
Mm.
safety. But what if you're at a friend's house
Mm.
and they've got older teenagers and they've removed all of those safety devices?
Mm.
It's not easy enough to just say, okay, go swimming, there's other kids in the pool.
Mm.
There always needs to be an adult within earshot, preferably within visual range of any age child in the pool. Or if you're going to a place that has a pool, make sure that your child knows specifically not to go outside and that you are with them as often as possible, or a responsible adult or older child is with them to make sure that if they do go outside, nobody goes anywhere near the pool. It's
So,
not
so we're not.
always it's not always Johnny got out and jumped in the
Mm.
pool because he thought it was fun and nobody noticed Johnny going outside. We've had active drownings in crowded pools or
Mm.
pools where people are watching and they just don't know what to look for.
Mm.
They're not sure what's happening, and all of a sudden it's too late.
Well, what should we look for in those situations?
So there's two kinds of drowning. There's TV drowning and actual drowning. TV drowning is arms waving and flapping, and I don't know what to do. Real drowning is just someone totally calm, kind of floating away, floating down. And not just because the younger kids don't know what to do, but there's a good chance that they've already completely physically exhausted themselves while you weren't looking. And now you look
Mm.
over and it looks like Sally's just kind of floating in the breeze,
Mm.
or just kind of going with the flow of the water. Um, you may hear stories about, oh, they found the kid way down at the bottom. Well, how many times do you go and the kids have got the masks on and they're trying to see who can get to the bottom of the pool first? You just need to be hyper vigilant and actually proactively watching them in the pool. And it doesn't have to be just a big, 8-foot deep pool or at the community center. This could be something as easy as a splash pool that you set up for the
Mm.
dogs and the kids. I don't care how shallow the water is. Children can drown in an inch of water.
Mm.
A puddle, if they land inappropriately and they suck up the water, could drown them. So you have to watch. It stinks. You're gonna have to go out by the pool where it's probably nice and the kids are gonna splash around. And the worst case scenario is they splash you.
Mm. Wow. For places in the country or overseas that don't have as strong a regulation as the San Francisco Bay Area, what are some things that we should do if we have a pool in our backyard? What should we do to make it safer?
So there's a lot of technology that you can deploy
Mm.
nowadays. They have pool float sensors that will let you know if something enters the pool. I think it listens for a splash and it notices if the water starts moving. It can set off an audible alarm, uh, send a notification to your Alexa or Google Assistant or your phone that something's happened. But that will be kind of the last line of defense because something has already entered the water when that
Mm.
happens. So you can buy door alarms for every door that leads out to the pool area. It's up, I believe it has to be above 5 feet where it's done so a kid can't reach up and turn it off, but it requires a key code for you to open the door without an alarm. So if the
Mm.
kid comes over and opens the door out to the pool area, it's an extremely loud alarm that goes off, and that lets you run towards that door. Oh, Johnny, you can't go out. You need to come back in.
Mm.
On just the non-technology part, something that doesn't require batteries, a fence, a gate, something that's tall enough and that has a mechanism that a kid can't easily open on their own, is going to be recommended in that area. And any of the pool manufacturers, any of the pool maintainers can give you information on local installers, local code to let you know not only what's required, but what's best for the age of children that you have in your home. When we had our final inspection for the pool, I had everything, the gate closed automatically and latched like it was supposed to. I had all the door alarms and we had everything set up. And he said, so you have kids? I said, yeah, I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old at the time. And he says, oh, okay, so you've got swimmers. Yeah, that's great. He was breaking it off as, can your children swim or can they not? And that was going to influence just how in-depth that inspection was going to be. He could see I had the alarms, but I think if I had younger children that weren't swimmers, he would have gone and tested every single one. So
now that brings up an interesting point about swimming and kids who swim. A while back, there was a bit of a fad around these drown-proofing things for infants, and they had these really compelling videos of, they'd drop the baby in the pool and he'd swim to safety. But then the statistics came out that although that made for good TV, it didn't actually reduce the number of drownings. What it made was more complacent parents.
Correct. It's the same thing. If you take an adult that can't swim and you throw them in a swimming pool, they will thrash their limbs about in some fashion to try to get to safety. And that's exactly what the infants do. It's just a reaction. It is pure, plain and simple, primal survival of just thrashing. It's not like you drop them in the water. They understand buoyancy. They understand how to flip themselves over. None of that happens. It's just primal, oh, dear God, get me out of here. And they get to the side. So there are proponents that say that it helps down the line. I don't think it's a good idea as a medical professional. I think you should wait until the child is old enough to understand instructions, old enough to control their limbs confidently, and most importantly, old enough to understand that when you're face down in the water, you need to push down and roll over onto your back. As soon as they can understand that, great, knock yourselves out. Go do swimming lessons. You can do them at home, you can do them at the community center, whatever's best for your family. But if they're not ready, they're not ready.
But once they are ready, swimming lessons early, swimming lessons often, but that's still not a replacement for adult vigilance, even when they can swim.
So I have our now 12-year-old. She just turned 12. Last year, she wanted to go to lifeguard training, summer camp. She was the smallest and the youngest, and she would have to drag these 15-year-old boys, rescue them out of the pool. And I still don't trust her alone or with friends in the pool, even though I know that she's literally trained to do it. She is not in that mode when she's in the pool. She is not in junior lifeguard mode when she's playing with her friends. If I told her you're going to be the lifeguard today and I get her out of the water and give her a flotation device, I have every confidence in the world that she can monitor that pool. But she doesn't want to do that. She wants to play.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
beyond that, there's
set...
also the possibility of injury.
Correct.
One of the scariest moments of my life was just jumping out of a boat at a lake my family goes to. I don't know how many times, a simple thing. I've been a strong swimmer for most of my life, but I slipped and I smacked my head on the side of the boat and it rang my bell. And I had enough sense to grab the boat and just kind of hang on until I was okay. But just a little more erg of pressure, concussion on top of that. And that could happen to a kid. Even the strongest swimmer can get an injury. Greg Louganis, right?
Oh yeah, hitting his head on the way down. And another thing with pool safety is running on the deck. We always yell at the kids, no running, no running.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is in children under 8, but you put them in a bathing suit and they become Olympic sprinters. I don't know what it is. You can't get these kids to run around. You put them in a bathing suit, they're gone with a flash. Usain Bolt can't keep up with these kids. So them running around.
You see this scar right here? That's why you don't run at the pool.
Exactly. And I hate to say it, but one of the first times we had people over, the kids were running and I told them, don't run. And one kid took the corner and went right out and down, hurt her arm, hurt her side. And all the other kids were just horrified. And now there's just the one kid that we have to remind, no running, please. And she'll slow down. It'll be a quick walk, but hey, I get it. The pavement's hot. I'm working on it, So just overall safety, always have a responsible adult, not just any adult. Uncle John, who's going to sit with his, bourbon and soda over in the corner is not the reliable adult I want to put on pool duty. Let's put Uncle John in the front yard in case the Amazon package arrives.
No, that makes real sense. So we've got one more on this list, but before we get to it, I wanted to ask you what you're working on these days, what's going on with some of your projects, and how can we help?
Yeah, so my cop buddy, Motor Cop, and I still have our weekly show, What's Your Emergency, where we go through and talk about things that are happening both in the three disciplines, fire, police, and paramedicine, but also out in the world. A lot of shows recently devoted to the civil unrest and public views of policing, and really trying to find out from a police officer, you know, what does that sound like for them? What does that mean for the community? What do they maybe not realize that their law enforcement agency is doing that could go away? A lot of stuff like that. But we also talk about some of the things that you and I are talking about today. So you can find that at wyeradio.com. You can subscribe on pretty much every feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can go and find us and drop on in. It is family friendly, PG, maybe a little PG-13 from time to time. But our daughters know and listen to the show, and they keep us honest.
Outstanding. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to go take a look.
Super.
So we got one more on the list here, and that is accidental drug ingestion, which you listed as the number one thing.
Number one thing. So a lot of times when people hear overdose, they think, oh, well, you know, just don't leave your heroin out and everything will be fine. But there are a lot of prescribed medications for adults that will kill children at that dose. Maybe you're taking a little something for that knee pain that you've had, you know, since the martial arts tournament, or from that motor vehicle collision you were in where you weren't wearing your seatbelt. You've got a little something for your back pain. Just one of those pills to a child can be fatal. The reason being is that those pills are designed to decrease the response of your nervous system. So it kind of dulls the pain by telling your body, shh, relax. So a child takes that, and the child's body is told, relax. And the body says, okay, I'll stop breathing. That sounds like fun. And it can be not only very traumatic for the family, but trying to bring the child back from that can be very difficult because it takes time to get those chemicals out of their system. A lot of us keep our medications in the medicine cabinet. We still have these things in our homes. And kids can climb up on a toilet and access that thing, toilet or sink, and access these medications very easily. Even the ones that are childproof. You know, we've had for decades that it has to be 2 concurrent actions that do it. But you might take your medication out, put it in your hand. I'm going to take 3. The phone rings. You put them down on the side of the sink. You come back, they're gone. There's not a chance that the dog ate them or that they got pushed by it. There's a possibility your child is coming by and emulating your actions and putting those in their mouth. So it's very important to not be distracted when you're taking your medications, that you keep your medications high and away from anywhere kids might be able to get to them. And be very honest if something does happen on what you've got and what you've got going around the house. Anyone that comes to visit, maybe grandma and grandpa come by, and they've got one of those little pill dividers where they put everything in for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday. Those are not child-proofed. So you need to be absolutely sure those stay high and dry. It isn't illicit drugs that are killing these kids. It's legal prescription medications that are taken inappropriately that's killing these kids. And it's entirely preventable.
Wow. Okay. So there's the prescription drugs, and people tend to be a little more laissez-faire about your over-counter medications. Are there a few on that list that we should also be vigilant of? I know that Tylenol's there's a very slim line between how much acetaminophen you need to take for pain and how much acetaminophen can destroy your liver.
Yes, and that is a very extreme dose. What you'll find, and don't hold me to it, but just looking at them, most of the medications that are labeled for children, that are labeled with the per dose, even if you unintentionally ingested the entire thing, those are usually below the lethal dose. So if for some reason you're trying to give 5 milliliters and you accidentally give 7, that's not going to be something that's huge. That's most likely not going to cause any harm. But if you're trying to give 5 and you accidentally give 50, maybe they vomit, maybe they don't, but you always want to call the number, poison control that's on the side, and give them a call. But a lot of times when we do call because of some sort of ingestion of medication, we'll get from poison control that, oh no, that dose should be fine. Just keep them awake for the next 6 hours and everything should be fine.
Okay. Outstanding.
But the last thing you want to do is look down for your back pain medicine and it's gone and Junior's licking his lips. And now you have to call me. Now you're in a panic. You don't know what's going to happen. So just try to keep track of all of these things. And remember that our children are looking to us for examples on how they're supposed to behave. When they don't know what to do, they'll come to us. That's why if you let them in while you're brushing your teeth, they'll learn how to brush their teeth instead of, here, let me do it for you. And that's the same with taking prescription medications.
Wow. Okay. That's a really wide and broad spectrum list of things that you see on a regular basis, that just being aware of these things and looking out for those things can reduce the amount of time that people have to spend with you in a professional capacity.
Exactly. You don't want me at your house, but if you need me, I'll be there.
Thank you for watching our show today. I hope you found something useful. If you have any questions about what you saw, please do leave them in the comments below. Myself, our guest, or our community will do our best to get those answers for you. If we don't know them ourselves, we will go find someone who knows them. If you loved us, please do hit the like button and the subscribe button. They make a bigger difference than you're thinking right now. And of course, go ahead and click on some of those videos YouTube is suggesting to you right now. We have a lot of stuff that we've worked hard on and are proud of, and hope that you'll enjoy them too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.